Hey guys, we got a special treat on. We have the Director of Communications for Auburn basketball, Marlene Navor, on. Welcome to the podcast.
I'm glad to be here with you, Matthew, and Jackson. Everything about Auburn basketball is like booming right now, and it's an exciting time to be a part of the program. And as fans and alum, I'm sure you're all proud.
Yeah, we are. Yeah. How do you explain what you do to the fan base, and then also how do you explain what you do to your grandparents?
Right. Like I said, I've been doing this probably 26 years now. I started when I was a freshman in college. I actually went to school at Washington State to be a sports writer. And then you have to go through the athletic communications office or sports information office to do interviews with your teams and players and coaches. So they kind of recruited me from the student newspaper my freshman fall semester year, and I've been doing it ever since. So basically, obviously we schedule interviews with coaches and players with the media. A lot, with us, we're on TV a lot, and work with ESPN, SEC Network, all the announcers, and starting to get a lot of requests right now from national media members, and obviously our local media base too is pretty large as well. We have a lot of writers and journalists that cover us. So basically that, just managing the interview schedule, getting them notes and stats about our team, statistics, update statistics, and there's a lot to along with the job as well, but those are probably the main things about it. But yeah, my family, they know I've been doing this for years, but they always tell people, oh yeah, she works for ESPN. And I'm like, I work with ESPN, I work with CBS, but I don't work for them. I work for Auburn.
I like to ask that to people. I feel like there's a lot of millennials and different types that have to explain to their grandparents exactly what they do, and it's always like regurgitated back in a very interesting way. It's interesting to hear you say you work with ESPN SC Auburn. To them, that's oh, she works for ESPN.
Right. And even my brothers, I mean, they watch sports a lot too. And like when March Madness comes, they're like, oh, there's my sister, she works for CBS. And I'm like, no, I don't work for CBS.
It's always a struggle. You're not alone. I'm an accountant, and even that sometimes you have to explain to people like exactly what's happening.
Right. And it really is a profession. Like, obviously I've been doing it for a while, and it's evolved. Social media has become bigger now. Like, not when I was in school doing this, all I had to worry about is writing a press release, I had to use a fax back then, so showing my age there. But I would have to send a fax with the press release and stats to the media. And then now you got email, social. It's changed the game for media relations professionals.
Well, tell us about Auburn. You're fairly new to the scene with the university. Tell us about your move from College of Charleston to here, and what you knew about Auburn, if anything, before you arrived, and kind of what your experience has been like.
Right. I had only been to Auburn once prior with the women's basketball. I was at Texas A&M prior to College of Charleston. And so we had played in the old Coliseum. I think Nell was the head coach back there for women's basketball. And that was my first and only. And so when I actually got to Auburn in May, when head coach Johnny Harris had hired me on the women's side to join as director of recruiting operations. And so I'm like, hey, Johnny, when she gave me the call in April, I think, I was like, I hadn't been to Auburn in years, like maybe over 10 years, and I'm going to have to come out. And it was actually the weekend of the spring game for football. And so I'm like, okay, I'm going to come out. I drove in and I'm like, wow, things have changed. Like, they're like skyscrapers now. There's all these buildings up that I didn't remember downtown and by campus. And I'm like, wow, things have really changed here. And, I was really impressed by everybody I met. I kind of was here I don't know, nobody knew I actually was there on an interview. And so I had known the media relations staff. I mean, you get to know a lot of people in the profession, and we have conferences every summer. And so I happened to be on the field with Johnny and the staff, and they were announcing her at the spring game. And I was just taking a picture for them. And the SID staff had saw me in the press box and texted me like, Marlene, you're here? Why are you here? Like, I'm like, let me, if I can get up there, give me a pass or get me in, I'll come and tell you all what's going on. And Cody Voga was my predecessor who worked with men's basketball. He was up there, and he and I had actually been talking prior, because Zep Jasper had transferred from College of Charleston to Auburn. So I was like, oh, isn't it funny? Like you just emailed me for his stats and bio and pictures a couple weeks ago. And, he's coming here now. And so when Cody left in August, he went to go to Ball State to be the boss there. It was a great opportunity for him. I thought about it. I'm like, oh, I came here with Johnny, but Johnny knew this is what I'd been doing for years, and I was able to help them in my time sign a top 20 recruiting class on the women's side. And, I'm pretty proud of being able to help them in a couple of months, 7 months of that. But it was really between Coach Pearl and Coach Harris, making the transition over, if it was the right thing for me. And I'm so thankful for Johnny and Coach for allowing me to be able to transition, because obviously, what a season to be a part of. And just because of my background too, I felt like I could help the team. I honestly know more of the national media guys than I do still the locals. I'm still trying to get to know them, because we don't do things in person for interviews a lot of times. It's just Zoom. So I'm starting to get to know all of them, but I just thought I had, a lot to give to this program to help, the rise of what we're going to go through soon.
That's cool to hear the synergy between the two teams. I wasn't aware of that detail. And I think a lot of coaches who come in kind of see that at Auburn. There's it's the small town thing, and you it's a smaller community, and being able to share somebody like you who has such a unique experience. That's cool.
Well, and that's the men's and women's basketball staff, they share an office suite. And so when I first got there, the men's staff, they're very welcoming to all of us. Anything we needed, Coach Pearl asked his staff to help us in the transition. And honestly, and we were laughing about this last night. I remember them coming in my office asking me if I wanted to play pickup ball. And I never played basketball in my life. Like, I played tennis in high school and volleyball and things like that, but never basketball. And I'm like, I have no game. Like, you don't want me on your pickup team downstairs in the practice gym. So we laughed about that last night, because and then they would call me coach. And I'm like, this is weird to me, because I am not a coach, like, I can coach the kids on how to do social or, do their NIL or PR or something, but I'm like, I am not a basketball coach.
You said you were from College of Charleston before this. Is it safe to say, without you, we would not have gotten Zep Jasper to Auburn?
No, and it's crazy.
Everywhere, there it is, guys. She got it. She got Zep to Auburn. You heard it right. And
it's crazy, because he made his decision after we lost in our conference tournament. Zep had, told the fans, hey, I'm going to transfer. He did his little post, and it took him a while to decide. And so I remember he had like 6 schools, and most of them were SEC. And I feel bad, because originally A&M was one of his 6. I think Ole Miss might have been one. I can't remember this top 6. He's like, oh, I'm going to let you know before I tell everybody. And I'm like, okay, is it A&M? Like, if it is, I think you should go, just because I'd worked there, in the past. And he's like, well, I'm going to tell you tomorrow. I don't think he announced the top 6. He just ended up saying he's going to Auburn. And so I think it was when I had come back on my from the spring game weekend, I'm like, hey, Zep, did you decide yet? Because he didn't sign, like, he committed, but he hadn't signed the paperwork. Mm-hmm. And I remember talking in the press box with Cody, my predecessor, like, has he signed? Because, like, you guys need to probably get that signed and sealed, And so, yeah, I didn't, when I got back to Charleston, I didn't want our compliance office to think that I was like tampering with anything. So I would just ask you, hey, how'd you like Auburn? Like, how, and he's like, I think I'm going to sign soon. I'm like, okay, great. So I never told him where
he committed and he hadn't signed. It took a little longer to actually get the sign after the commitment, is what you're saying.
Yes. And
the message board drama is real then. I don't remember this about Zep, but we've had several recruits like that in different sports where they commit and then everyone's asking for days at a time. But did he sign it? Is the fax in? So that's interesting to hear that that's a real thing that people are worried about.
So I couldn't tell him like what I was doing. They just all knew. And unfortunately, our head coach left to go to Boston College in April. And so we probably had the most Division I transfers as well. I think it was 12 of our kids had left. And so I'm just in the locker room with our new coaching staff. They were announced, and there were 3 of them. Zep was one of them, left in the locker room. And they're like, Marlene, are you leaving too? Because all the coaching staff, they either went to Boston College or somewhere else. And they're like, we know you're going somewhere. Where are you going? And I'm like, oh, I don't know, West Coast, I'm from the West Coast. So I didn't really want to tell them until I had signed my own contract as well. And so literally, I think it was a Thursday, he finally signed. And then the next day I signed my contract. I was just waiting for HR, I think, for the background check. And then I was like,
friends following each other to Auburn.
I told them, I was like, guess what? I'm going too, and even the other kids that were still there that hadn't transferred yet, they were like so happy that we were going to be together. And even Coach Earl Grant, who was our coach there, everybody's excited and happy for us.
You mentioned you're from the West Coast. You worked at Washington State, UTEP, UConn, Texas A&M. Like, what was your reputation for Auburn before you got here? Like you said, you'd come with Texas A&M before. We're like, what's the zeitgeist, the national, like, for someone that doesn't have, we have our Homer view, we want to kind of hear how you heard about all this.
Well, I actually was born in Huntsville because my dad's Army. And so we had a house in Huntsville up until I think I went to college at Washington State. So we had talked about it because I had to stay in state. I couldn't go out of state just because of tuition. And I was like, maybe if you guys still have the house down in Huntsville, I can still get residency down there. And I probably would have gone to Auburn, So I'd always known, I was in kindergarten and first grade when we left. So, but, we do still have family friends. I still haven't been able to go up to Huntsville to see them, and my godparents are there too. So it's not, when I moved to Charleston from A&M, everybody's like, oh, you're going to be back in the South. Like, that's going to be a culture shock. I'm like, no, I was born in the South, like, it's crazy that it was never been a culture shock for any moves that I've made in my athletics career because of my father's military career and moving around.
Can you walk us through, so ESPN crews coming in town, you have to give them some sort of stat sheet or something. I don't know if you have a stat sheet or how tell us what goes into a day like that when the SEC crews is coming in town.
Well, honestly, this week, I wasn't even working on Ole Miss. I've been working on Georgia next week and Kentucky with CBS. So you're working games way ahead of the current game. And so I think we had a production meeting with the CBS, like the guys that bring in the trucks and the cameras and things. I was sitting in with War Eagle Productions, and CBS does a lot more than ESPN as far as their operation and when they bring in things. So just set up, helping the crew figure out what they need camera wise. Well, that's more War Eagle, but I sat in on that. And then just the producer had reached out, I think this week for the CBS game, wanting to schedule time with coach and players, do a Zoom call. I think we're going to do a Zoom call with them, Tuesday, maybe. It's Bill Raftery and I get it, Brad Nessler. And that's an A team, obviously.
Nice.
So there's just, for basketball is different than football. Football, you only got one game a week. So they do a lot of football prep. Our job, you meet with the folks, the talent in person, usually with all your coaches. And then basketball is so different because we just have so many games a week. You could have 3 that it's so more fast paced. And I don't know how to explain it. It's just really different from covering football.
Do you give them a one sheet of information? How do you direct that kind of the facts you think need to get out there to them? How does that communication go on?
Right. And so we do game notes, this big old 30-page thing, but that's usually later on. But when you initially do prep with them, I just send them a one sheeter of anything I know at the time of facts, especially about the series and whatever specific to that game. Or say if a player knows another kid they went to high school or whatever it may be, just to make them in advance. And then updated stats right after our Alabama, I sent it to SEC Network as soon as we were final on that. So
what's the top of that list? I'm really curious to see what we're pushing as a guys, this stat's a big deal, this piece of knowledge, please bring this up,
Right. And for games that are going on, we usually do post-game notes too. So it's kind of a little bit use of a previous game. And then, like I said, if ahead of time, Coach Pearl's really into stats. So he'll always text me oh, what's our record? This and this and this. And then yesterday it was his staff texted, hey, when's the last time a top 5 team came to play at Ole Miss? And what was their success rate too, and things like that. So because he asked that in advance, usually those are some nuggets that I usually pitch to the media because he's asked me. Because honestly, like, I was in Charleston 11 years, so I have that record book memorized, and like here it's like starting from scratch. Like I felt bad I didn't know who so-and-so was on a Twitter Spaces the other night. They're like, you didn't know who that player is? I'm like, I'm so sorry, because I've really only been in this two months. And
did you sit down with David Hazel and do like an Auburn history lesson? Do you go into like class every day with him?
That probably is a good idea, because he took us our whole office, and we have 12 people in our office. We went and met for Christmas, like a lunch before the holidays, which is great. And I had known about him, from the past, that he was athletics director and SID. And so that's a great idea. I should probably schedule some lunch with him again. He took us to the country club, so it was really nice.
You mentioned in a podcast I listened to that Scott Strickland is a guy you look up to. What about David Hassel, another SID athletics director?
It's probably just because Scott's a little bit younger, and he's
ageist. Got it.
But he was the guy that I knew, when I was a freshman in college. That I think he was at Mississippi State or wherever it was. He might have been at SMU, or I can't remember, Baylor or somewhere down there. That I'm like, man, he was one of those. And you're seeing more and more. There's not a lot, but a lot of SIDs that move up to be AD, and it's happening more often in the last couple of years. So I honestly haven't met Scott in person still.
Well, you met David, so maybe, get some connections there.
I think I told him that my career goal someday was to possibly be an athletics director down the road.
That's cool. Well, both of us grew up Auburn fans, and I feel like we are very aware of narratives around our school. Auburn's kind of a small town. We're stuck, Auburn competes on this level with all these massive state universities. So I think that creates a culture sometimes where maybe we don't feel like we get the attention or the respect that we deserve, especially historically in football in certain ways. But obviously you mentioned how special of a year this has been so far. They haven't lost in regulation. They had the one loss in double overtime. They're approaching number 1 in the polls. They have great numbers with quad 1 and quad 2 wins, all these great things. And this week I've been hearing you've been busy because Bruce has been everywhere and all this. Do you feel like that message of this team is getting out successfully right now? And if so, how have you gone about managing that? Because I'm sure it's a bit overwhelming. It really feels like the nation's eyes have turned to Auburn in the last couple of weeks.
Right. I mean, when they went final against Alabama, I got blown up on my email and my phone. Like, and I have help in our office too. Josh Wetzel does our social media, and Greg Ostendorf helps to write, and Jeff Shearer. And so I just remember texting Greg. I'm like, oh, I don't think I'm going to have time to finish up the post-game notes, because I got a bunch of requests that I've got to fill before. And plus our team and coach were going to fly home to get back for classes. And I'm like, oh, we're not going to have enough time to fit all this before we try to get to the airport with the bus. So, but I love it. Like, I wish they had jumped on the bandwagon earlier, but I mean, we have Bruce Pearl. He's the biggest difference of why we get the coverage we do. Obviously, Jabari, Walker, we've got so many talented kids on our team, and that's the difference. And because they have so much personality too, they love to have fun. That's the difference. Like, that's why when I looked into transitioning over to the job, I'm like, it's a PR person's dream to have this. Like, anybody that's available to do any media interview, no matter who it is, and when Barstool emailed when I was on the bus, I'm like, will coach want to do this? But he didn't know what Barstool was.
You got a shout out in the Barstool podcast.
Yeah, well, I sit in with coach when he does all these interviews. So I just happened to be in the room. So that was very nice of him to do that. But that's just who he is. He loves his staff and takes care of them, and when credit's due, and that's what makes the difference. Though we have Bruce Pearl, and he knows all of those guys. Like, I remember when I was going to take the job, I had texted Goodman, I had texted Jeff Borzella from ESPN, Gary Parrish from CBS. I know a lot of those guys. I'm like, hey, should I take this job? how's it like to work for Bruce? And they're like, he's awesome, you know? And so they're like, it's a no-brainer, Marlene, that you want to work for him, you know? So,
It's great. It's great you bring those guys up, because that was actually, I was going to ask next, is like, you know, a lot of Auburn fans are kind of not newer to the sport necessarily, but like really starting to like think nationally and thinking of like who, like, it's not just the SEC anymore for us, it's this national picture. Like, who are like the power brokers in college basketball that like you said, you just, when you want to take the job, you texted these 3 people. Like, who are the people in college basketball that if they got Auburn in their mouth and they're saying good things about us, that's like, these guys are the big guys, you know?
I mean, John Rothstein, you know,
John
Jeff
Rothstein.
Even though the Auburn fans don't like Jeff, I mean, he literally is an ally of ours. I was trying to explain that on my Twitter yesterday. I was jabbing him a little too, that we should give him some grace, but
Was that Jeff Goodman?
Jeff Goodman, yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
no.
Oh, I know.
Fans will not like that on the podcast.
But it's funny because like I know those guys, and like Seth Davis did something with Coach yesterday. Andy Katz will do something on Monday with Coach. So, you know, those are all the normal college basketball guys, and Coach knows them all personally. And the thing for me, like College of Charleston, you know, we weren't going to the tournament every year. We weren't on national TV all the time. And so what I would always do, I would work the Final Four so I could keep those relationships going from when I was at A&M or whatever it may be from the Power Five. And so that was always my chance to go pitch to like all the national guys in the media room, like, hey, we're going to have this team the next year. And so that relationship, that's how I've gotten to keep in touch with them when I wasn't getting, you know, my teams weren't getting national attention. So it's nice to hear from all of them again. You know, not a lot of people knew I had gotten out of the business and came back, or I was here at Auburn as well. So no, but it's nice to know. And like I said, it's all because of Bruce and our kids and how we're doing. And unfortunately, that's how it goes. You got to win to get the attention.
Yeah. Who's your like white whale that if you could get Bruce on this podcast or radio show or TV show, this would just be like your biggest moment for him?
I honestly felt like, well, Big Cat, because I had asked them, is Big Cat going to be on it? And they're like, no, he's not going to be able to make it. And I just thought that was just so different. I mean, I know they had other coaches on this year, but that was just something I had never really worked with in the past. And I don't know, maybe Good Morning America or something.
The Today Show or something like that.
Yeah. And he may have, you know, I'm friends with the Tennessee SID. Maybe I need to ask Tom.
He's already been on The Bachelor, right? So you already got that notched off. Maybe he could be on like one of the variety shows, like The Greatest Singer or whatever they're called.
I would love our kids to be on Ellen doing the
Ellen.
I don't know, like, you know.
You could, we have this like Twitter army now and everything, you know, you pick your white whale, we might be able to take our shot. Yeah,
Ellen would be kind of cool, like, you know, if this all continues, you know, this
sure.
ride.
Well, you mentioned Jabari and Walker, and obviously I think everybody from the outside has kind of fallen in love with the personalities on this team. It's one of the great parts about basketball, right? They're not wearing helmets, they're not wearing gear. You see their reactions. Obviously they play an extremely fun style. What's it like being around the team on a day-to-day basis? And are there any tidbits or just things about them and how they operate day-to-day that would be fun for fans to kind of know, just from your perspective?
Like I said, I'm still getting to know them, but I just remember my first week. My first road trip with them was at USF, but I really wasn't official yet. I was kind of doing both jobs still. I was traveling with the women, traveling with the men, but the Bahamas trip was like, you know, the first time it ever, like, because they were like, didn't you work on the women's team?
But you got that Bahamas trip in.
Yeah, and so that was the bonding trip with them because we were there for the whole week. And the kids actually, I call them kids because some of them could be my children. But they were on the same, like usually they're not on the same floor as them. And I'm like, man, we're in the Bahamas. We have one night when we first get there, you can go out to the pool, whatever in the back. And it was just telling for our team that they were just in the hotel room playing video games. They might have brought their Xbox or whatever, because I could hear them playing. It was so loud that I'm like, wow, you guys are playing video games? Like, you don't want to go out to go on the slide in the back or the beach or, you know? And so that's what they were all doing, bonding together that week. And I mean, this team's funny. And like, I think we had 2 little buses. They didn't have those big buses down in the Bahamas. And so I was in the player bus and I was like, wow, KD is the funniest guy on the team. Like I felt like I was in a comedy show with like Eddie Murphy or something, with all the jokes he was telling. I'm like, man, you seem so quiet, and then you can't stop talking on the bus, and everybody's just laughing. So it's just so great. Like when the writers are talking about this team and the bond they have, it really is a band of brothers. Like they would do anything for each other, and that's what makes the difference with this team. And like I already knew that week, and I've been around men's and women's teams that are special, and something's gonna magical happen. And I'm like, I just knew it that week. I'm like, we've got it. This is it. Like this team's special.
Bruce always talks about culture, and I feel like I remember in the Final Four run, he talked about how the key to that team was no man being jealous of another man's success, and supporting each other. And you just see that from the top with a guy like Jabari. So that's cool to hear. And KD, we talk about KD all the time. He's fascinating. I feel like he has this game mode that he goes in, and then it's interesting to hear that in the background. I know he's posted some stuff on social media that's hilarious. And
we're gonna have to start doing special episodes on KD. Is what we're talked about. That we're going to start. That we could talk an hour about just KD and his play and the crazy stuff he does.
Well, and that's where like everybody always like Devin Cambridge always bugs me because he's friends with Zeb, and he always teases me, "Oh, Zeb's your favorite. You only like him." And anytime Zeb will come over and I'm talking to ESPN, "Oh, you're just trying to pitch, everything about Zeb." And honestly, I never told them all, but probably my favorite player on the team, like, is KD, because I love the way he plays. He plays with heart and passion. Like, I just love watching him, and, but I think, what game was it? It was home, Florida. I think it was Florida game. And we were on ESPN2, and they'd asked for Jabari, at post game, to join them. So ESPN will let me know, hey, we're going to get coach, we're going to get so-and-so, bring them over at the table immediately after the exchange of shaking hands. And so I remember tapping Jabari, like, hey, they want you. And he's like, why me? He's like, why not KD? So that just was, telling of, how much he cares about his teammates. And it should have been KD, because I even told Jimmy Dykes the next game against Alabama, I'm like, because he did both of our games, I'm like, why didn't you all choose KD? He had such a great game. He's like, well, the producer and everybody back in Bristol were like, we want Jabari, So yeah.
You lead into our next question so well. All these, I guess we sent these questions, so maybe you're helping me out here, making us look like better podcasters. But like Cade Cunningham, Zion, Trae Young, Blake Griffin, Kevin Durant, JJ Redick, we got this like ESPN spotlight when they were in school. Like I was a neutral fan. I didn't have but I knew to turn on the game because ESPN was telling me JJ Redick's playing on Tuesday at 8 and you have to watch. Zion's playing at this time. Cade Cunningham's playing at this time. Jabari is that number one guy, number one pick, and one of the best players in college basketball. But it's taken a lot of time to feel like he's starting to get that spotlight. Like, what do we have to do to get him that spotlight? And how do you navigate a player like that is getting so much attention? And so many people are probably calling you to ask for access to him.
Right. And he and I sat down the other day to map out his month of January, because we've got a whole, The Athletic was going to come this next week to do a feature on him. Sports Illustrated's coming at the end of the month. Bleacher Report's coming to do a video feature. And so everybody's coming for the same story. And I don't tell them all, well, now they're going to know kind of, because I don't, they're all, The Ringer is doing something on him too, a really in-depth story. But I think sometimes it's hard to get SEC Player of the Week and SEC Freshman of the Week, but that's because, and I was telling coaches, it's so hard because we have balanced scoring. It could be any guy at any night. And so that's why I think it's hard, because, he is being consistent in his numbers, but they're not like 30-point games because he's the only guy scoring. Sometimes I hate that it takes those numbers to put somebody like what you're saying, JJ Redick and things like that, when he's just on a really good team. You have to watch that Bama game to know he could have scored 30, 35 if he was on a regular team that didn't have so many guys to shoot those balls. So I don't know, I guess in your position, I don't know if you can push it or not, but how do we push ESPN a little bit and be like, guys, we have the best player in college basketball, make our games prime time, get in here. It sounds like they're already starting to do that. It just feels a little frustrating that it didn't start a week or two ago. Yeah. And it's all coming. Like, I don't know why it didn't happen in November and December. I mean, all the scouts and GMs for the NBA teams have been coming in as early as November, December.
Kevin Durant was on the sidelines. Like, what do you want, ESPN? This is like you know?
Well, we didn't even know that was going to happen. I'm like, oh my God, that's KD over there. You know, like I thought about it because they had played the night before, but I didn't think he'd stay over. But I didn't know the connection also that one of his coaches was an Auburn grad and played for us too. So
shout out Adam Harrington. If you ever want to come on the podcast, Adam.
But no, I just hope it'll, you know, for players sometimes too, it takes what your team is doing as well to get both combinations. So hopefully, I'm hoping we got to win tonight. So, and good things will happen hopefully in this next week.
Yeah, I think it's all happening. So you talked about how Bruce is a great marketer, and we agree. We could never say enough about what Bruce has done for this program that we care about, and it's just been amazing to watch what's happened. But you've also had some exposure, and Auburn is now getting this exposure from this Twitter thing, this Auburn Twitter army, this the Auburn Twitter as we call it. So I guess what has your experience been like dealing with that? I know you've mentioned Twitter Spaces and stuff, and also we have to get on the record if you have a favorite meme or if you want to use 2 or 3 to not leave somebody out, you can. But what's your experience been like watching that happen, and kind of what are your thoughts from the media side, seeing it kind of blow up?
Yeah, and I think it was crazy because I don't know why I didn't see it earlier, you know, when we're in the Bahamas or I'm trying to think if it had to have been before the Murray State game that I actually really noticed it. And I'm like, oh my God, these are so funny because, you know, in my, on the women's side for recruiting, I was doing, you know, I do all the graphic design and I was doing all the social. So I love that kind of stuff. I love creativity and design. And so I'm like, oh my God, these are great. Like, this is a great idea kind of thing. And so I started engaging with people. I might have DM'd some or just even responded on Twitter. But, you know, one thing I told Coach when I, Coach Chad and Coach Burgo and Coach Pearl, those are the main 3 that I interviewed with, that, you know, I would always, just like I did in Charleston, I would always engage, you know, be a good ambassador for the program, engage with fans, donors, you know, alum as much as I could, because I think this position, you need to be that way too. And not that I, you know, Coach is the face of the program, but, you know, I still like to do those kind of things with fans and anything, you know, to engage with them. And that's been my way. I've been, you know, I met Auburn memes and Pablo at the Alabama game. And I said that in Spaces the other night that I knew they were going to be at the game. So I was like, hey, come down and see me. Pablo did right at halftime. I'm like, oh, you're Pablo.
Would you like to hang out with Pablo again? Because he will be on this chat in 5 minutes.
Oh, is he? Oh, shoot. Okay.
We're interviewing him after this. So feel free to stay on and hang out.
Yeah, I got to go to shoot around after this. But then at the end of the game, you know, usually security, there's, you know, nobody can come by our locker room. And then I was trying to get Jabari and Allen out because they were still celebrating. Like, we got to do media, you know? And so I turn around and there's Pablo and he's like, hey, and here's Auburn memes. I was like, holy, you know, and that's where I took my photo with them that they had given me to like post later. And I was like, oh my God, this is crazy that they were able to get past security to come by our locker room. But, you know, at that point, I think the Alabama folks just went home. They didn't want to even care about, you know, keeping us secure, I guess.
They're Twitter army, but Pablo must be on the Twitter special forces to get past security. Yeah.
Yeah, no, yeah. They had some friends too that were at the game that had like corporate tickets, I think too. So, but no, it's been great. Like, I'm going to meet up with, I think, Juice next week at the Georgia game and some of the other folks. So and if I, you know, and I don't want to say this, but like, if I can do anything to help, you know, with Coach, he'll give me fans to reach out to. Like, with Outlive, we've met with cancer survivors and cancer patients. So we've been able to do meetups right after radio with them, and I've gotten him to autograph something beforehand. So it's been great to engage with the fans.
We won't hold you much longer. I know you have to head out in a second. College game day. Anything on that? Is there a chance we got college game day for the Kentucky game? No other better games that weekend.
You know, everybody's been asking me that question, but I would assume ESPN would have reached out to, you know, me or other staff members, and nothing's come through. And, you know, I've never been a part of a basketball college game day. Football side I have at my previous schools, but no, so I don't know how they operate and how they select, because everybody keeps on asking. So maybe I need to find somebody today and ask them, hey.
I think in this, at least in the football one, they wait till Sunday to announce it, but you're right. I would have assumed they would have talked to you already about it. It's like a
Yeah,
potential.
because of the logistics of it and parking their trucks, and we're, you know, so I just don't know. I don't think it's coming there.
We got to push for it. We got to get it. It was so much fun 2 years ago.
I did a little research just now, and I think they started today, but they're doing a lot of it from Bristol. I don't know if they're traveling this year. Jay Billis is in Kentucky for the Kentucky-Tennessee game starting here in a little bit. And I think he's on site, but I don't think they're going full on site. They may not
because even our announcers tonight, they're not going to be here, you know, for SEC Network. They're going to be in Charlotte and things. So I'm like, wow.
Yeah, that's interesting. And I hate that, because last time I really didn't feel like they got the moment in the game. I feel like there was a big moment at Florida. I think it was the Florida one, maybe the one before that, where there's a big shot. It took like a lag almost to them to react to it. And I was like, man, that's a little, you know, they go to other games. I'm very disappointed that they're not coming to some of them.
That's why I just thought it was funny. Like some they do and some they don't. And I'm not sure why that is. I know, you know, we want to keep them safe and our team safe and things like that. That's a question. But you know what, maybe I should text. I do have Jay Billis's number, so maybe I can like ask him if he knows anything.
You don't ask him if he knows. They got to tell him you got to come. Everyone's asking.
Or have coach to call him too, or something like that. So and ask. But like I said, we're taking it one game at a time. So you know, this one's an important one tonight for us.
Yep.
Marlene, is there anything else you want to tell the listeners about your job or anything else in your life?
No, I just I keep on telling coaches I'm very blessed. This staff, like every person on our staff here, just awesome to work with. You know, Coach Wes Flanagan, who played here as well, and his son Alan, and we just have great kids. You know, I've never not been on a men's basketball team where the kids aren't, you know, respectful. These kids, they're really good kids. And that's just shows what, you know, how Coach Pearl and his staff recruits. And it's just been a blast. And like I said, there's no reason for me not to say good things about this team. But it's not just the things that people see on TV and whatever, it's behind the scenes too, that, you know, they really are good kids.
All right, well,
they deserve everything. They deserve everything they're going to get this year, because they deserve it.
Well, thanks for coming on and sharing your perspective. We really appreciate it.
All right. I've had so much fun with y'all. And if you need to get some players or a coach on, you know, let me know.
We will.
Anytime.
War Eagle.
War Eagle.